What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and we're going into Robert Plant today. Robert Planet, as he has once been called. Let's get the Zappa connection out of the way first. Robert Planet, part of the whole opera groupie routine, gets name dropped in that. Back in the 71, a whole lot of love jam you can hear on Leather from the 77 winter tour. 88, they covered Stairway to Heaven. Probably other connections, I'm sure, but we're going to leave it at that for now. Those connections exist. Pretty direct. We're going to do his albums. I'm doing 13 of them. Doing all of his solo albums that were just Robert Plant, doing the 2 he did with Alison Krauss. Not going to do the one he did with Jimmy Page. One I've never really listened to or really got into. I never bought it. I don't know why. I know I've heard it. But yeah, so not doing the Jimmy Page one, though I may follow up with that later, just because I also think there's a live album, Plant Page live album. Not doing the Honey Drippers EP, just doing the 13 studio albums, which I think are consistently interesting. He definitely had a certain phase in this career that I don't think was very successful. But the era before that phase and the entire time after that phase I think has been pretty successful. And in an interesting way, it is very roller coastery in that there's ups and downs. But the end of the roller coaster is not diminishing returns. The end of the roller coaster is actually getting better and better, and somehow it keeps improving. So yeah, a really interesting solo catalog for Robert Plant, who, if you don't know, was a member of a little band called Led Zeppelin out of England. Kind of were big in the late 60s, 70s. Had a couple FM radio smash hits kind of thing. Kind of shaped the direction of all hard rock music forever. Kind of an important little band. But we've already done those albums. Now we're going on to Robert Plant solo albums. 13 of them. Let's get started. Here we go. So number 13, number 12, number 11, 3 albums that came out consecutively, though not in the order. Number 13, Manic Nirvana, came out in 1990. Number 13 on this list, that was his 5th solo album. His 3rd solo album, which came out in 85, was Shaken and Stirred. His 4th solo album, which came out in 88, was Now and Zen. I do think Now and Zen is the best of the 3. I do think Shaken and Stirred is better than Manic Nirvana. But I decided to put them all together as one because I do really think they all almost sound of the same era, same mindset, same Robert Plant, trying to there's an embrace of 80s production that definitely hurts the listening experience. I have a hard time with some of these songs. And even the songs I really, really like on these albums, sometimes the 80 production, the beginning of the song, I'm like, ugh. But then by the time we get to his voice and the melody or whatever, I'm like, okay, I can put that by me. But it's still at times cringeworthy. So all 3 of those albums have that. I think there's a progression from Shaken and Stirred onto Manic Nirvana where he's trying to be maybe not more pop, but maybe more mainstream, whether it be kind of pop rock in sort of Now and Zen, whether it's a little more hard rock, but not really heavy hard rock, more like, Bad Company, Foreigner, maybe a little Joe Satriani, David Lee Roth with Steve Vai, hard rock. Not a good mix on Manic Nirvana. To Shaken and Stirred, which still has some interesting ideas lingering over from the first 2 albums, but is still going in a weird direction that is a little less interesting, and the production is pretty bad. But what differentiates these 2 is I do think Manic Nirvana is by far the worst of them. Manic energy does not serve Robert Plant well, especially in this era with this production. The production is horrible. There is absolutely probably one of the lowest points of his career, a song which is the 4th song on the 3rd song on the album, SSS and Q, which has this little Prince breakdown funk rap thing that just does not work at all. The opening, Hurting kind of reminds me of Tall Cool One from the previous album, which was kind of a hit, a song I do not like. There are 2 good songs on Manic Nirvana, then they're both slower. And I think as we go on through his career, we will find out that that is Robert Plant, where Plant excels. I Cried, and what is the other one? Your Mom Said You Cried in Your Sleep Last Night. Two kind of slower, more, ballady, slow burning numbers that I think actually work really well. But yeah, it's a rough album. By far, I think, his least successful. At number 12, we get Shaken and Stirred, which has a lot of just kind of forgettable songs on it. The production is pretty cringy, if you can't handle that 80s sound. But there are two outright classic songs on this album that I think are better than everything on Manic Nirvana. We get Sixes and Sevens, which is the last song on the album. Kind of a nice little slower, funkier, that's very much in Plant's comfort zone. And we get the ridiculously great Little by Little, just an all-around great, funky, kind of slow burning, building up energy with a nice little cheesy keyboard prog break in the middle, and just Robert Plant at his 80s best, when it's just a little dancey, a little funky, a little groovy, but in a really completely Robert Plant kind of way. The rest of this album is kind of cringy, but I do think those two songs make this album definitely better than Manic Nirvana. And then of the three, the one in the middle, I think, is by far the best. Again, the production is pretty rough on a lot of it, but I think there were some really, really good moments. Heaven Knows, the opening track, it's a phenomenal little, good energy kind of, not necessarily a hard rock song, but a good rock pop song. Cannot Stand Tall, Cool One. This is the one where I respect the fact that he's using samples. He's using samples of Zeppelin tracks. I respect the fact that he's trying to stay up with what current musical trends were. This is 88. So a little behind the times, but at the same time, Run DMC, at least in Beastie Boys, were at least getting into the top 40 and exposing people to stuff. So at least he was, I guess, a little bit on the edge of rap at the time, incorporating it into his music. So cannot stand it. I think it's a poor use of samples. I just don't think it works. I don't like the song. Really good song called Helen of Troy, which is a really good kind of nice, really guitar energy. It was the song he opened with when I saw him on this tour. It was a great opener. My 17-year-old self loved it. Billy's Revenge, another upbeat number. Ship of Fools, those are the first three songs on side B. Ship of Fools is a really nice ballad that has some really nice, just kind of like that Zappa crystallized guitar sound that just kind of weaves its way through it. Really nice guitar playing. And then there's a song called White, Clean, and Neat. Horrible title, but also has a really, really good groove to it, and is another one of Robert Plant's just in his comfort zone type songs. Rest of the stuff is kind of forgettable, has some horrible drum sounds. But really, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 songs that I think are pretty respectable and pretty listenable, and they kind of salvage the rest of the album. But I do not like Tall, Cool One. But yeah, don't start with these albums, man. I can't, if you're going to get into Robert Plant, don't start with these 3 albums. Unless you absolutely love that overproduced, all of these songs don't sound like a band playing music. They sound like Robert Plant wrote songs. They went into a studio. They carefully constructed these, a whole bunch of overdubs. There's nothing spontaneous or live about it. These are crafted in the studio songs. Some of them are good. The ones on 11 are much better than the ones on 12, and the ones on 12 are much better than the ones on 13. But yeah, those are my first 3, which I do think are very much of the same type of vibe. On to the next 2. On to the next 2. Number 10 and number 9 are Pictures at 11, his debut album from 82 at number 10, and The Principle of Moments, his second album, which came out in 83, at number 9. And I put these together because these also very much kind of sound like very similar albums, or of a very similar sort of phase in Plant's career. The first phase. There's a straightforward 80s rock vibe, but like an 80s radio pop rock vibe. It does sound like Plant's trying to craft out his own little mature rock kind of vibe that distinguishes himself from Zeppelin. But at the same time, the first album, the one that is at number 10, the highlight of the album is a song called Slow Dancer, which has this absolutely great kind of slowly churning, Cashmere-esque, absolute fire vibe in it. And so, yeah, he's trying to get away from himself, from his past, and distance himself. But at the same time, when he leans into those things that he's done so well in the past, that's the highlight of the album. I think Pictures at 11 just doesn't have as much strong material, though it might be a little consistently better. Starts off pretty slow. I think side A is pretty bad. Not pretty bad, but it's weaker and not very memorable. Slow Dancer closes out the first side, highlight of the album. And then the second side is not bad. You get a nice, really guitar, sort of harmonica breakdown, kind of interesting little breakdown in the middle of the Worse Than Detroit song. Like I've Never Been Gone has a really nice, slower ballad energy that Robert Plant does well. And the closing song, Mystery Title, has a little poppier vibe, but it's got a really good groove. Phil Collins is on drums, and the drums sound fantastic. So the second half of the album is not that bad. Slow Dancer is the highlight. But what it is lacking, and it's kind of the same reason Now and Zen beat those other two from the previous, is because the Principle of Moments has two absolutely fantastic, ridiculously good songs. The second song, In the Mood, which might be one of the best things Robert Plant has ever done. I'm in the mood for a melody. I'm in the mood. I mean, he's just like, he's barely like, he is so in the mood to just enjoy a melody that he can almost like barely sing the song. But at the same time, there's so much passion and emotion in it. It's just has such a groove. Oh, it's a good song. And the album closing, Big Log, which is just kind of like desert creepy. Like there's a video. So my image, like, I associate the desert very much with this song because I think the video from it was filmed out in like Palm Desert, out in like southeastern California, out in that area, just east of LA. And there's that sort of spooky desert energy in it, but it's like do like really kind of creepy and subtle, but a fantastic song. Maybe a couple other good moments on here. Horizontal Departure is a nice little kind of fall reggae vibe. I think that's the one that is like the fake reggae vibe. His vocals are really fun in that song. But for the most part, it's kind of a bland rock thing that he's doing. But for some reason, having In the Mood as the second song on side A gets me through side A, because they're not bad songs. You know, I get through the first song, and then In the Mood puts me on such a high that I'm willing to enjoy the next two. And then Big Log is the last song on side B, so I'm just kind of like making it through those. And Horizontal, which is the second song, is kind of one of the better songs, so it's kind of a nice roller coaster. But yeah, these two albums are pretty close, and I could see people switching them, but I think In the Mood and Big Log are so good that I'm willing to bump them up to being a little bit better than Principle or Pictures at 11. So yeah, his first two albums, very much of the same vibe, just like those last three were, number 10 and number 9. The rest of them, I will do one at a time, on to number 8. Number 8 is his most recent album, Raise the Roof, which came out in 2021, November, end of 2021. This is his second album with Alison Krauss. A really enjoyable album. I think the quality from this to the last one is quite a bit up. This is an enjoyable album. I really like it. It's super chill, super laid back. Not as country as their previous album. I don't think the songwriting is as strong as his previous album, but it's a really, really good listen, and I don't think there's anything bad on it. Interestingly enough, the first album, which is much higher on this list, there's on each of these, there tends to be maybe for every 3 slower songs, there's one upbeat song. On their first album, the upbeat songs kind of like annoy me. Not that they, well, yeah, every time they come on, I'm like, I don't need upbeat songs on this album. These slow ballads and this like slow, like this like simmering energy on that first album, those poppier songs or those more upbeat songs, it takes me a while to get into them. And while by the end of every one, I'm like, okay, that was good. And now I'm ready to get into something slower. On this one, I like the upbeat ones. I think the slower stuff is not as strong, so the upbeat ones are a little more needed. But it's a pretty good album. Again, super chill. Some of the highlights, Can't Let Go. A lot of cover songs on here. Can't Let Go is a good sort of like a song about a train. It's not a song about a train, but it has that good energy of what a song about a train would sound like. Just that sort of like upbeat train vibe. What else do we have? Last Kind Words Blues is kind of a really fragile, a sort of acoustic, delicate little ballad, but has this nice little like lilt to it, but a lilt that you got to be careful with, or it could just like break. The last song on the album is by far the hardest thing, though it's not hard. It has a nice sort of piano rockish vibe, maybe a little like Warren Zevon doing country, but a softer Warren Zevon doing country, but that kind of thing. Yeah, so some really good stuff. Go Your Way, not Your Own Way. Go Your Way has a nice, like, Plant sings this one, acoustic stroll on it. You're just kind of like, going through a field or something. But yeah, it's a good album, really solid. I don't think they're reinventing any wheels here. They're not breaking any new ground. It's just two people singing really well. I think Plant has a mysterious quality to his voice. Krause has sort of a haunting quality to her voice, and either whether they're harmonizing or just trading tracks, the different vibes that they both lend to any given song complement each other very well. And I think this album works. But that's my number 8, Raise the Roof. Number 7 is his 6th, Fate of Nations, which came out in 93. And I could have grouped this. I obviously didn't for reasons of the list and where they fall on the list. But I could have grouped this with those 3 that were at the bottom of the list. The Manic Nirvana, Now and Zen, Shaken and Stirred. Because there is still sort of a lingering production issue in which some of the production choices are not that good. There's some of the songwriting is like this almost predictable where we get like a riff and then everything drops out but the drums, and Plant sings over the drums, and the riff comes in, and then we go into a chorus, and it's kind of predictable. But I was trying to figure out why I like this better, because it still has some really cheesy moments. It's still kind of like he's aiming for like some more mainstream, but I figure like these 4 albums are just fast food, right? They're just fast food, right? But those first 3 were really bad fast food, and this is like that one fast food chain, and I don't know if it exists, but for the sake of this argument, it is. Maybe like a Boston Market, which was fast food here, because you'd be in and out in a couple minutes with your food, like a Boston Market, where the food, you're still getting it kind of fast. It's still maybe not the highest quality, but it is so much better than the other stuff, and it is so delicious, and it is so good. And yes, it is kind of cheesy at times, but it completely works, man. Some of the highlights. Drops in the first song, just this epic, just stomper, churner, what Robert Plant does great, Calling to You. Just from the beginning, we're like, yeah, I'm in this. Come Into My Life, the third song, is a nice atmospheric vibe with like moments of like a little more energy, and then going back down with some more like, psyche, kind of slow burning energy. 29 Palms, a pop gem. Oh, love it. 29 Palms is out there in the desert where they film Big Log. This song reminds me of like 29 Palms on a Sunday afternoon. You're driving through the desert. And again, this is Southern California desert. So back when I was there, it's like 80 degrees at the hottest. Winds blowing. It's just a perfect day. It has that breezy sort of vibe. But man, do I love the song. I think the highlight of the album is the one after that called Memory Song. Has this really nice... where are my notes for this? Memory Song. Yeah, really just solid groove throughout the entire thing. The guitar part is kind of haunting in a little bit, but kind of upbeat, not haunting like slow and mysterious, but just has this really almost slightly unsettling feeling, like something I think like a My Morning Jacket would cover, but a really good song. Nice cover of Tim Hardin's If I Were a Carpenter. The rest of the album is maybe not as consistent. There's some weak things in throughout, but there's a really good song called Great Spirit, which at first almost sounds like a slow R&B jam, and you're like, man, is he going to lean into some like little R&B here? And he kind of doesn't go that direction, and it just becomes like a slow, slightly smooth, funky Robert Plant ballad, kind of cheesy. It's about the Great Spirit. I think the background singers are like going, Great Spirit, or doing something like, Kumbaya like that. But I don't know. It works for me. There's some weak stuff on here. There's a song called Network News. Why Plant leaves a band. Henley leaves a band. Who else left a band? Gabriel left a band and did a song about TV shows, personalities. What it is about these solo artists from big bands doing like commentaries on like news and television in their solo careers. It's a weird little dynamic. But yeah, again, I don't think he's breaking much new ground on this, but I do think it's a lot more fun. I think the songwriting is better. I think his pop tendencies are a little pure, like on 29 Palms. I think the riffs are a little better on like Memory Song. I think it just works way better. And that opening track, just listen to like the first song so you can get that drop in to that awesome groove in the beginning. And you're going to feel like, yeah, I'll stick around for more of this. Robert Plant is back, people. Robert Plant is back. Yeah, because everything else on this list were the albums that came out, except for the last one, Raise a Glass, were just the albums that came out before this. So yeah, my number 7, right? Or number 8? I lost track of my count. My number 7, Fate of Nations. Number 6 is Lullaby and the Ceaseless War. This came out in Roar. This came out in 2014. This is a really good that kind of fits in with his late period stage, which is fantastic, which is like sort of folk roots rock, but mellow roots rock, Americana psych music with like standard like Robert Plant slow grooves that drop in every so often, interesting instruments used throughout, not just your typical like drums, bass, keyboard type thing, a little more acoustic stuff, maybe some violin, maybe some interesting stuff like that. So the sonic palette is really good. He's doing interesting things. My issue with this album is I think it's a pretty strong album, but the middle, maybe towards the middle third, there's a run of like 3 or 4 songs that just kind of have a sameness to them that maybe don't distinguish them or lift this album up above the other 5 that are on this list. But some really good stuff. Little Maggie, a traditional cover with some interesting arrangement, nice little sort of acoustic Americana back porch type jam energy. Rainbow, beautiful melody in that song. Some really good stuff on here. Up on the Hollow Hill, one of the last songs on this album, has a really nice sort of like slinky, biting guitar. Like even if the groove, there are songs throughout all of these solo albums from the one that Band of Joy on, which have these sort of low, slow burning acoustic energy, but there'll be just a guitar player, some guitar line just going through the whole thing that just like gives it this eerie, ominous feel. Up on the Hollow Hill has that. So yeah, there are some definite highlights on here. It's definitely of a vibe, that sort of chill acoustic vibe. But there's some really good stuff that works. What else? Embrace Another Fall has a really nice sort of heavy guitar middle section where things get a little heavy for a while. Yeah, and then Turn It Up has a really kind of one of those funky low key grooves that he does so well. So yeah, some good moments on this album. Middle part, A Stolen Kiss, Somebody There, Poor Howard, House of Love. These 4 songs and like kind of the back half of the middle third are kind of samey, but a good start, good finish, not bad, just maybe a little repetitious at times to my ears. But anyways, still a good album, and I really enjoy it. My number 6, Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar. Number 5 is 2007's Raising Sand, which is just a straight up awesome album. His first album with Alison Krauss, her and Robert Plant. And I've always thought of this is like a soup. And I don't even like soup, but I watch a lot of cooking shows and I understand about soup. It's like a simple soup that has maybe 5 or 6 ingredients, maybe not even that many. But each one of them, like, you can taste because the soup is so well balanced. None of them are overpowering the other. They all complement each other perfectly. But there's a simplicity to it. But at the same time, once you like get past the simplicity and actually pay attention to the music, you realize there's a lot of layers that are working together really, really well to make this work. That's the way this album is. Robert Plant's voice has a mysterious quality to it, kind of a spiritual, kind of I know things you don't know kind of things, or I'm going to look for things you don't know kind of energy. Alison Krauss has a haunting energy. And there's a lot of covers on these, but they're well-chosen covers. And there are covers in which if you changed nothing else but just the singer, and even if they phrased the thing, try to phrase it exactly the same way, the lyrics, just the quality of their voice would give the songs a completely different vibe. And there are a couple songs on here in which it sounds like it's going to be a Plant song by the way the music comes out. And it's got maybe like a lower kind of a groove. It's not as country. It's not as slightly just, I don't want to say poppy because Krause isn't poppy, but maybe not as delicate as some of Krause's songs are, but Krause will sing over this Plant groove, and that contrast of what you think is going to be Plant's mysterious energy, but she comes in with this haunting energy, are just some of the best songs on here. What is that? I think Sister Rosetta Goes Before Us is one of those, which has a kind of a Decemberist, like a sinister Decemberist quality where somebody's going to commit suicide or something bad's going to happen in a Decemberist song. It's got that kind of energy to it. Some really good stuff. What else? We got Trampled Rose, which has this just really haunting, mellow, slow burn vibe. Really, there's not a bad song on here. There's a nice, they go back and forth between singers. There's not really, I don't think there is like an actual duet on here. They might harmonize together, but I think they're not, it's either Plant or Krause, Plant and Krause. The going back and forth works. The way they're laid out musically works. Everything about this album just works. They do a Townes Van Zandt cover, Nothing, which is probably the heaviest thing on here. It's got some like electric guitar, but the electric guitar is like sporadic, and then it gets slow and creepy, and then it gets intense. So it's got a nice kind of going back and forth. Might be the highlight of the album, or the Sister Rosetta. Those are both pretty fantastic. But yeah, a really fantastic album. Again, it's a late night chill album. It's one of those that I liked when it first came out, but over the years I've come to absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. So yeah, a really good album. My number 5, Raising Sand. Number 4 is Mighty Rearranger, and we're leaning into this psych rock energy on this one. Not like your straight psych rock, sort of identifiable, stereotypical 60s psych rock, but we get some rock energy mixed with a little bit of like world beat energy with a lot of just psych influence, just tweaking things a little bit or giving it a little darker, slower groove. Just fantastic songs from start to finish. There is some straightforward pop that seeps in there, but I think it's offset by sort of the eclecticness of just Robert Plant being Robert Plant and that always present sort of funky psych energy. What do we get on here? We get a horrible song called Freedom Fries, which I'd like to forget that part of my country's history. But it's got one of the first standouts on the album, short, little, under 3 minute, nice funky guitar, kind of a heavier song. What else we got? Enchanter, The Enchanter. This is your Robert Plant sort of like mythical, dark, sort of like energy that sort of like you feel like he's tapping into some occult energy on here, and it's just got that little like that Zeppelin occult vibe seeps in a lot on this album in a really, really good way. Takamba has a nice psych rock vibe. Dancing in Heaven has an almost like the Birds kind of psych vibe with that sort of like, I don't want to say 8 Miles High, though there are moments where it sounds like maybe the end of 8 Miles High, but just that sort of like trilly like psych guitar sound that the Birds did. Almost like the Dukes of Stratosphere's homage to the Birds, psych vibe, that kind of thing. Let the Four Winds Blow, the bass in there kind of reminds me of like a early 70s Pink Floyd number with that. Red, White, and what do we have a song called? No, that's a bonus track. We're not going to talk about the bonus tracks, but there is a bonus track that is a nice, really good, fast-paced acoustic energy. But yeah, it's a good album, man. I like it. Again, it's a little rock and bombastic and poppy, but there's a lot of really good psych elements. There's a lot of really good, those slow churning grooves in there. Just a lot of fantastic moments. And I think this is the second album he did with the band, The Strange Sensation. Yeah, this is the second. And I think having a band and like having the same group of musicians, and he toured with them, to have them like come in and like do something, I think you feel a little more of that band energy. But I think it's a really strong album. Mighty Rearranger, my number 4. Number 3 is Band of Joy, which came out in 2010. And he's definitely at this point leaning into like a lot of percussion and like just the bass of the songs, like this almost like world drum beat, just not a lot of cymbal work. Like he's obviously been influenced by sort of Collins' no percussion, no cymbal thing to like so as not to fill up that sort of aural space. And so there's just a lot of like really good drum driven songs on here. There's a lot of good psych energy. It's kind of a slightly eclectic where you get a little bit of like acousticy, bluesy type stuff. You got some Beatles energy. You got a Teenage Fan Club song, which kind of sounds like a little Teenage Fan Club action. You got a some ballads. It really is like a mature Robert Plant, kind of dabbing in a whole bunch of musical styles that he liked throughout the years, but they all sound like Robert Plant because he has such an identifiable voice, and just the way he arranges songs and what he brings to it sound like Robert Plant. So it all just works. Yeah, just a really, really fantastic album. You got a cover of a Richard Thompson song, House of Cards, which sounds like Richard Thompson, like the Decemberists doing a Richard Thompson song. A lot of Decemberist sort of vibes in some of his acoustic stuff in these late era albums, or at least the Decemberists are picking up Robert Plant vibes when they would make their albums. Silver Rider has a really, really nice sort of extended jammy guitar part in the middle that kind of sounds like a jam band, that sounds loose, that doesn't sound rehearsed, that sounds like it just happened. That's the kind of vibe that gets, which is always a good thing. Maybe the highlight of the album. But yeah, you can't buy my love, sort of a Beatles-esque number, very early Beatles-esque number. Very much sounds like that. Yeah. You get some country, a little bit of country on The Only Sound That Matters. You get some really, really good stuff on this album. So yeah, it's a little bit eclectic, a little bit all over the place, but cohesive. Definitely more getting away from a rock and roll vibe and more to an eclectic subgenre of all forms of rock type vibe. A little bit of country seeping in, a little bit of like world music, folk, all that other stuff is really starting to seep into his sound here. And it works. And it brings me joy when I listen to it. Number 3, Band of Joy. Number 2 is Dreamland, which came out in 2002. Man, this is a fantastic album, and can't believe I'm saying this, but what really, really makes this album work are all the covers and Plant's interpretations of those covers. There's a cover of Morning Dew. I've been pretty hard on other artists other than the Dead doing any covers of Morning Dew. Though I did kind of like the Allman Brothers version. I do like the original. I do like this one. Plant's voice works really well in this. I don't know why. It just resonates. It all works. What else we got? We got a cover of Bob Dylan's One More Cup of Coffee, which has a whole different vibe than the Dylan one. It's almost like it's like an acoustic techno thing. The verses have this weird thing where you kind of imagine like sort of a drum machine techno beat under it. Whole different vibe. There's a lot more going on, it seems, than in Dylan's version, but it kind of all works. You get a Tim Buckley cover with Song to the Siren. You get a cover of Hey Joe, which is just like, I think it's like a completely deconstructed, like it just starts with this almost sketch of a song and then it just gets wilder and crazier. It is absolutely brilliant. It is a fantastic cover. You get a closeout, you get an album of cover of Moby Grape's Skip Song, which I don't even think is on a Moby Grape album, but was like a bonus track on a recent release. So it's interesting that there's a cover of that. Yeah, just really, really excellent album. What else do we have on here that really works? When my train fare home, if I ever get lucky, has this absolutely slow, sinky, slinky, like creepy vibe. A lot of really guitar work on here, just in and around verses and not necessarily solos, but adding like atmosphere or just intros or just, it's all over the place, like in the folk rock roots Americana psyche vibe. But again, it all works. Like, I don't know. They went in the studio, knocked out a bunch of covers. I think there's 3 originals on here, maybe with a rearranging of another one, but it is all fantastic stuff. Absolutely great listen. It's a fun listen, and it is one of those where the covers, you know the covers. If you know the covers, you're going to recognize the covers, but you're going to be, I think, genuinely like, oh, I really like what he has done with these songs, because I think he has done some great stuff to these songs. But yeah, really, 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 really good song. Album, and songs. My number 2, Dreamland. And my number 1 favorite Robert Plant album, his most recent release as far as not with Alison Krauss, but as a solo album, 2017's Carry Fire. I think there was another release of maybe him redoing songs in isolation, but new material. This is by far my number 1, his most recent release. I think it's just a perfect constructed album from start to finish. It just flows perfectly well. There's a nice sort of like highs and lows, doesn't get too crazy. We're very much in that sort of rootsy world rock, psych Americana, folky vibe. Some fantastic songs. Second track, New World, has just that like dun just walking along with Plant being confident, kind of strut about it. Not like a really heavy Zeppelin strut, but just this confident, older, wiser, mature, just strut about it. The May Queen is an awesome opener. What else do we have? Just fantastic stuff. Some great guitar playing throughout of it. What is it? Away with Words, is that the one? One of these, no, Keep It Hid has this almost like the bass line that's kind of just bubbling underneath, almost sounds like a King Crimson 80s bass line, something you can hear on like Beat or Discipline. Absolutely fantastic. Some really nice gentle melodies on here. Dance With You Tonight has a nice gentle melody. Carving Up the World Again, A Wall Not a Fence, has this really nice sort of propulsive but minimalistic type like vibe about it. Some great backing vocals, great guitar work on there. Yeah, there's just, it's all so well produced and put together. Again, we're doing the drum thing. We're like very like non-cymbal work. A lot of just toms and like heavy low drums are being played to kind of provide the foundation. And Plant's laying all these things all over it. Just these great instruments, some great choices, some great melodies, some nice guitar work. And I just think from start to finish, there's just not a weak track on this album. I will say I saw him live, I think twice on this tour, and I thought he even did the songs that he did from here live better. So I think I fell more in love with the album. So that may have recency bias 6 years ago at this point, 5 years ago, I think, when I saw him. But anyways, Carry Fire, a fantastic album. And for this to be, 2017 this came out, Zeppelin came out in the late 60s. We're talking like 50 years into his like career. Wow, man. Good for you, Robert Plant. Beautiful, beautiful album. And the live show was fantastic. Lucinda Williams opened for him on that tour. She played for an entire hour. That was amazing. Anyways, that's another video for another day. But that's it. My number 1, his most recent, without Alison Krauss, Carry Fire. And that's it. That's my opinion on Robert Plant's discography solo career, including the stuff he did with Alison Krauss, but not the thing he did with Jimmy Page. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments. Let me know your list. Let me know what albums I should reevaluate. Let me know why those 80 albums are better than I claim they are. You know all that stuff. Comment, subscribe, like, knock stuff off your record player. Lid was closed, so nothing was hurt. And go listen to music. Go listen to Carry Fire if you haven't heard it. And go listen to Little by Little off Shaken and Stirred. Not one of his best albums, but man, that is such a good song. And go listen to the first track off the one where they drop in off, what is that? Fate of Nations. It's a really good opening track. All right, anyways, that's it. Peace, y'all. Go listen to music. Go listen to all the music. Thank you. Talk to you later.